With Wrath of the Lich King right around the corner, you're probably going to be asking yourself, what spec do I choose as rogue while leveling up? Or one that you might want to be picking through the entire expansion. Today I can help you figure that out. And first off, I'm going to be starting out with the sub spec. Sub is going to be great if you are duo questing or running dungeons primarily and PvP on the side, and you don't have dual spec. Sub makes for a great secondary spec so that you can swap into it when you're doing PvP, and swap over to one of the other two specs while doing PvE. If it's a spec that you just love the feeling of and you're more of an experienced rogue, you can definitely get by as sub. Sub is definitely one of my favorite specs personally, but I definitely think that it works the best as a secondary spec, and choosing one of the other specs as your primary spec to use in most PvE instances. You really only gain all of the benefits of Shadow Dance when you're able to be behind the target at all times, so that you're able to spam ambush or use Garrote when needed. Yeah, sub's a great spec if you're dual leveling with somebody else taking the aggro, and you can just stand behind the target, just bursting them down. Next up, we're going to be talking about Assassination. Assassination is an awesome spec. It's one of my favorite PvE specs. It has a few downsides, but the benefits are that it has a pretty fun ramp up time with just getting up your Rupture, your Slice and Dice, maintaining your Garrote when possible, and applying Hunger for Blood. The cool thing about Hunger for Blood is that you can proc it off of other classes' bleeds, so it doesn't actually have to be your own bleeds. It'll apply a buff to yourself, which increases your damage dealt by 5%, which is awesome. The more interesting thing about Assassination Rogues is that you benefit from being able to use Envenom, which deals nature damage and not physical damage. One potential downside that you could say about Assassination Rogues is that they have to be using Deadly Poison to benefit from being able to use Envenom, which means that your offhand daggers are going to be utilizing Deadly Poison instead of something like Crippling Poison, Wound Poison, etc., etc. Another benefit to Assassination Rogues is that you don't have to be behind the target to be doing the most damage you're able to, which means that you don't have to rely on somebody else helping you level up through questing. You should have no issue doing it yourself. It may not be good. It may not be as good at multi-targeting and cleave damage as combat, but once you get good at snapshotting your Rupture over to a few different targets and kind of getting a feel for that, it's a very fun spec to play, with a decent learning curve. It's not super bad. It's definitely pretty straightforward. It's really just the balancing act of keeping up your bleeds and Slice and Dice on all of the targets that you're able to. And speaking of combat, I would say that this is probably the spec that I would recommend the most highly while leveling up through Wrath of the Lich King. It's also going to be one of the best specs in Phase 4. I'm going to say no surprises here. Combat just really benefits from the armor penetration gear that you start to get after Trial of the Crusader. Just an overall really solid spec. With the combination of Killing Spree and Blade Flurry, you're going to be able to take down mobs no problem in pretty large groups. And then once you're done with that group and say something else spawns and you're energy starved, you do still have Adrenaline Rush in your reserves. You're just really not going to feel the energy starvation as much in this spec as you would in the other specs, especially since in Assassination, Mutilate costs 60 energy. Sinister Strike only costs 35. That's a pretty big deal. Combat Rogue, I would say I'd highly recommend this, and you can be running it with axes, swords, fist weapons, daggers. Ideally, you're going to be wanting to run axes or swords, especially since you're going to be running Hack and Slash, which gives you a 5% chance to get an extra attack on the same target after hitting your target with an axe or a sword. Read that backwards, don't worry about that. The downside is there is an internal cooldown with a 5% proc rate. So you kind of just go with what you got. Before Wrath of the Lich King drops, if you still have enough time before just after seeing this video, go bang out a bunch of honor. Do as many battlegrounds as you're able to. If you're Alliance, you probably already don't need any more honor and you're just able to spam everything. Horde, on the other hand, we are always losing. Always losing. Don't worry about that. Grind out as many games as you can, and at minimum, please go get your swords or axes, depending on if you're orc or not, or if you just like the aesthetic of either of them. Nobody can judge you on that one. Just make sure that you pick the correct talent for if you decide to go with maces, swords, axes, daggers, fist weapons, etc. To make the changes required so that you're able to run those the most proficiently within your talent, or don't. It's up to you. I mean, if you know that you're going to be getting swords in the near future and you're running daggers right this second and you're running the sword talent, it is what it is, man. I understand the grind and how much gold you probably don't have. Anyways, not to get too sidetracked on what's going on, just to briefly give a TLDR for those people that are just skipping through to the very end to see what the best spec is for leveling up through Wrath of the Lich King. Sub is going to be a great duo talent. So if you're leveling with somebody through questing, or you're doing dungeons primarily and you're just looking for a fun spec to play, sub is a great option. Assassination is going to be great for single target or longer fights. It's a super fun, fairly easy spec. If you prefer using bleeds, you probably should have just played Feral, to be honest. But Assassination is also a great option, especially in Phase 1 for Wrath of the Lich King. So if you have not played Assassination yet, leveling up using Assassination up through into Phase 1, that's probably going to be the amount of practice that you need after boosting your new rogue. Once you start to get that armor penetration gear off of Trial of the Crusader, you're going to probably want to move over to combat anyways. So it depends on if you just enjoy combat and you don't mind playing combat for the rest of Wrath of the Lich King as far as PvE content is concerned. Killing Spree is a very fun ability to use when you are not getting stuck in walls and glitched out of the map, and it's actually functioning properly. But Killing Spree is great, especially paired with Blade Flurry. You're going to be pulling a ton of DPS. This is going to be the spec that I will be picking while leveling up through Wrath of the Lich King. And I hope that you're able to now choose a spec based on your preference. All of these, they're going to be running roughly the same. I would say sub is probably the one that's going to be behind the most. But that's not to say it's not doable. If you want to run sub all the way up through the next 10 levels, do your thing. Nobody's going to stop you. Anyways, take care. Keep an eye out for my next video. Subscription button. You get the idea. Take it easy.